First of all, I'm amazed Bishop Tutu was as restrained as he was. His people are being mugged, shot, imprisoned, killed, smothered. I admire his restraint, not his assertion. I suspect if you or I were in his position, if we were a black South African leader or otherwise, I found you to be a very principled man and a combative man. I doubt whether you'd be on the ramparts, I suggest. I know I would be, and I think you would be. So I think he's been pretty restrained, number one. Number two, with regard to terrorism and necklaces.
I'd have to disagree with you, Senator. Well, I think to say that President Reagan's statement yesterday was nauseating is not anything that I could agree with under any circumstances.
I'm referring, not whether you agree with it or not, the frustration that he must feel. I'm surprised he hadn't said more.
Of course he feels frustration. We all feel frustration.
Yeah, but his people are dying.
Coming through
his people are dying. You feel frustration, they're dying. They're being shot. Children, we're talking about necklaces.
Of
they're
course.
lining up and they're shooting children.
It's a terrible situation, and what we need to be thinking about
is what to do about it.
And
what disturbs me, what disturbs me, and I will try not to be disturbed, is not merely your policy.
Remember, I'm a taxpayer.
I remember you're a taxpayer.
Just because I'm Secretary of State, you can't kick me around. I'm a taxpayer.
I understand that, Mr. Chairman. I understand that. But I want to tell you something. What disturbs me more than the policy that you call a policy is the rationale for the policy. The rationale for the policy. You set out 4 principles that you adhere to, and then and I will go over them in a moment. Then you say on page 14, we must not become part of South Africa's problem. We must remain part of their solution. We must not aim to impose ourselves, our solutions, our favorites in South Africa. Damn it, we have favorites in South Africa. The favorites in South Africa are the people who are being repressed by that ugly white regime. We have favorites. Our loyalty is not to South Africa, it's to South Africans. And the South Africans are majority black, and they are being excoriated. It is not to some stupid puppet government over there. It is not to the Afrikaners regime. We have no loyalty to them. We have no loyalty to South Africa, to South Africans. And the fact of the matter is I listen to this rationale first of all. It is the leaders of South Africa and their people, black and white, who have the majority responsibility. They must rise to it. Well, they are rising to it. They're rising to it. The only thing left available to them with that repulsive, repugnant regime of Afrikaners there. And it's the only way they have. They've tried everything for the last 20 years. They begged, they borrowed, they crawled, and now they're taking up arms. The second thing, progress toward peace requires a timetable. Timetable, elimination of apartheid. What's our timetable? What are we saying to that repugnant regime? Are we saying you've got 20 days, 20 months, 20 years? We ask them to put up a timetable. What's our timetable? Where do we stand morally? Thirdly, black South Africans, the choices before black South Africans are equally clear. We call on them to avoid easy descent into violence, terrorism, and extremism. To demonstrate by their action they understand the need for compromise. Hell, they've tried to compromise for 20 years. They've tried everything in their power. And look what's happened to them. They're being crushed. And then you say, the fourth principle is that our policies and those of our allies ensure that we expand political liberties in the post-apartheid South Africa. Mr. Secretary, maybe it's because I come from the civil rights movement in this country. We sat there and we heard the same kind of arguments, the same exact arguments. We cannot impose from the North a solution on the South. They must work out their problems, black and white, together. We cannot, as a nation, expose them to the economic ravages that will come. We must consider what will happen after segregation before we eliminate segregation. My Lord. And finally,
that is not an accurate
Let me read it.
Because we don't say we have to consider what happens after the end of apartheid before we end it. We have said again and again and again that it's an abhorrent system, and I can be just as emotional as you can about that, and it needs to end.
You state 4 principles. I assume they're equally important. You say, fourth, our policy and those of our allies should ensure and expand the political liberties in the post-apartheid South Africa are accomplished by an expansion of economic opportunities. My God, worry about that when it comes. These people are being crushed. And we're sitting here with the same kind of rhetoric. The same thing we heard. We heard, go slow. We heard, we have to take care of the problem afterwards. We heard, we can't impose.
You are totally misconstruing the testimony that I gave.
Read first.
Furthermore, Senator, let me say that I hate to hear a senator of the United States calling for violence.
I'm not calling for violence.
That's what you're doing.
I hate to hear
exactly what you're doing.
I hate to hear an administration and a Secretary of State refusing to act on a morally abhorrent point. I hate to hear this country. I'm ashamed that this country puts out a policy like this that says nothing. Nothing. It says continue the same. We put no timetable on. We make no specific demand. We don't set it down. I'm ashamed that's our policy. That's what I'm ashamed of. I'm ashamed of the lack of moral backbone to this policy.
Well, I resent that deeply, because there is tremendous moral backbone in that policy on a bipartisan basis, and has been for many, many years. There is no bipartisan
basis for this.
There is, I doubt very much if there is any real disagreement with the objectives set out there, with the steps that have to be taken if there is going to be the kind of change you want. There is no other way but to get those things to happen.
The only way.
Now the question is, what can we do that will get those things to happen? And I think that I outlined the course that is there, and also have tried to point up to you and to the South African government the terrible situation they're creating for themselves.
Obviously, the action has caused violence, or at least has not stopped the violence. There is violence, overwhelming violence in South Africa today. If you want to avoid more, the former Prime Minister of Australia is correct. Let the South African blacks know that we stand with them four square.
We do. We have let them know.
They don't believe it, neither do I.
Well,
please, let me
you can believe it or not. I might say I read my testimony a different way than you did. I'm surprised that it could be read with those inflections.
Thank you, Senator Biden. Senator Mathias.
Could I make a comment, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.